So good evening, everyone. My name is Cara Antoine, and I'd like to welcome you to tonight's webinar on Yes, We Can, Women Working in Heavy Asset Industries. I'm here with my colleague, Elina. If you would please introduce yourself very briefly, and we will get started.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Elina. I'm an ambassador for Women in Tech Russia, and I'm pleased to welcome all of you here today.
Thank you. And, to get this kicked off, Elina, what I'd love to do is take an opportunity with our audience tonight to give them a very brief introduction to women in tech. And then we will start the conversation with a fantastic lineup of speakers that we have for you tonight. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my desktop with you and just walk you through a couple of brief slides to let you know who we are and Women in Tech Russia, Women in Tech the Netherlands. So hopefully you can see my screen, and Elina, if you'll just stick with me here through this brief introduction. We really love to welcome you tonight to this conversation. To briefly introduce you to Women in Tech. So for those of you who may not know who we are yet, we are a global movement and an organization with a double mission. The first is that we recognize that we have a big gap. And so we are on a mission to close the gender gap and to help women and girls embrace a career or a course of study in the field of technology. The other is that we're very focused on having impact, and we're doing this through an alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations and focusing on gender equality, of course, at the center of everything we do. We're looking at education, entrepreneurialism, social inclusion, and science and innovation. And being an entrepreneur, by the way, for us also means a corporate entrepreneur, as well as someone who has started their own business. So you may be someone who is working inside of a corporation, maybe an entrepreneur, and we're very interested in helping you to have your voice in the space of technology as well. So we want to equip all the women and girls with the necessary skills and the confidence to succeed in their career or course of study in STEM. Today, we have more than 32,000 members around the world, and we exist in about 15 formal chapters. So Russia and the Netherlands are two great examples of those chapter locations in about 70 countries today as well, where we have this presence of the 32,000 individuals. What I'd like to just mention to you are a couple of examples of the programs that we have under these Sustainable Development Goals, just to give you a small idea of the impact that we are trying to drive through the actions that we're taking. When we talk about education, we're offering advanced degree scholarships. And so, for instance, here in the Netherlands, we have a Master of Science and Management degrees in data analytics and in data science. And we're also promoting a youth ambassador program around the world, both in Russia and the Netherlands and in other countries, where we're looking for girls who want to be ambassadors representing their own country in terms of what they're doing in the field of technology. In entrepreneurialism, we have a wonderful program which is for role models. And it's actually the development of becoming a role model, becoming that role model that we all want to see. And so when we think about the people who have inspired us, we're thinking about how can we become that person in the next generation of technology at the forefront of leadership. We're also offering a pitch program, and this is for entrepreneurs as well as entrepreneurs to learn how to speak about their ideas and to create that full circle loop, in fact, to getting and securing funding from a venture capitalist or from landing your idea on the table in a boardroom. And so we're helping individuals to learn how to pitch with confidence and to find their voice in the conference room. We're leading on executive tech roundtables, so speaking with women in executive roles in the field of technology to ensure that we're driving the right conversations when it comes to science, innovation, and technology. And of course, through social inclusion and this lens that we have on ensuring that technology is not seen to be exclusive to anyone. We're really looking at expanding our footprint globally and ensuring that we're reaching to all communities in the world to inspire women everywhere. What I wanted to do was share very briefly with you the structure that we have in the Netherlands. And I would just suggest that this also is something that you would find in many other countries like Russia as well, where we're focused as internal tribes on helping to drive this mission and to create impact in each of our countries. So like Elina and myself, we have a board of individuals who is looking after and steering the direction of their countries. We have teams that are focused on the media and communications. And of course, we're always looking for more people. So if any of you that are listening today want to participate and join us and help us in running social media campaigns or creating campaigns, writing blogs, we would love to welcome you into our tribes. We have community leaders also that are reaching out and speaking with corporations and looking to identify speakers and mentors and mentees in our countries in order to help to inspire the future generations in technology. And of course, business development, where we're looking to create sustainable and long-term relationships with corporate partners and sponsors across the country and global landscapes that we're operating in. And finally, what I'd like to just share is there are lots of different channels. These are a number of the Dutch channels that we offer where you can find us, and simply for any country, when you start with the women-in-tech and then .org, you will find us in all of the countries, /RU for Russia or NL for the Netherlands, and so on. And so across these channels of LinkedIn, Instagram, our websites, and Slack, you will find lots more information, and we invite you to join the conversation and to be a part of Women in Tech. So with that, Elina, what I'd like to do is hand back to you to introduce this theme for this evening, and we will get started with the program.
Thank you very much, Cara. Hello, everyone who is watching us live, and also those who have been watching us in recording. I would like to briefly explain to you why we're hosting this special event, Yes, Women Can, about women working in heavy asset industries. Did you know that in Russia, for example, some professions are forbidden for women, even until now? In fact, for example, starting as of January 2021, this list will be cut from 400 professions to about 100. And Russia is just one of these historically patriarchal countries, and in many ways, it remains the same until now. One narrative suggests that Russia is progressive in gender equality compared to others. This is largely due to the legacy of Soviet Union, in which women were given access to so-called male professions. But the motivating factor behind this initiative was not, however, to promote gender equality, but just to replace the men at work. While meeting the challenge, the Russian women's role in maintaining the household and taking care of the family did not change. And in a way, the Soviet Union system just pushed women into double shifts. They filled the labor gap, but were not empowered enough to receive the gender equality status. And until these days, women in such industries as energy, Industry 4.0, industrial IoT are often a minority. During our work at Women in Tech, we met with women around all the world who work in heavy asset industries, and we were fascinated with their stories and their paths. They all faced hurdles in their careers that many might consider impossible for women to handle, but they did not let this stop them. And we want to share their stories to inspire you and show everyone that yes, women can. Cara, I'm back to you.
Yeah, Elina, thank you so much. And, I'm really looking forward to listening to the stories that each of the speakers have prepared to share with us tonight. And we're going to have an opportunity to do that in just a few minutes. And after listening to each of their 4 stories, we'll then have a short panel discussion with them where we'd love to encourage questions from the audience. And of course, we have some questions, I think, already on our minds and out of our curiosity that we would love to pose to the panelists as well. And I thought I would just take a brief moment before we get queued up for our first speaker to also reflect on part of my own career, Elina, because, as you've gotten to know me a little bit, Elina, part of my career experience was in working at Royal Dutch Shell. And in fact, usually on the bookshelf behind me, I have my hard hat that still has all of my badges of honor, as I would call them, from the oil platforms that I used to fly to and that I spent a lot of time. And in fact, most of my career at Shell, you would find me wearing my hard hat and my PPE gear. But, it hadn't been my initial plan to go into the energy industry at first. I hadn't necessarily been trained in energy and oil and gas. What I was trained in was in leveraging digital technologies in order to transform businesses. And I happened to meet Shell at a conference where I was talking about the transformation of the organization I worked at the time, which was Hewlett Packard. So I was in high tech. And we were talking about really moving from a very static-based company to a dynamic online company. And, Shell's theory at the time was, well, we're struggling with something at Shell, which we think that through the digitization of our assets, we can improve our safety record on. And they really caught my attention when they started to talk about that. And I thought, well, I'm a very purpose-driven person. And, I've always had a sort of a personal mission to want to change, improve, and save people's lives and the planet. And I thought, well, now Shell is really speaking to me on something that I think is very important. And indeed, the notion was, please come in and help us to digitize our asset community, so all of our offshore and onshore assets, so that we could improve our safety record at Shell and bring people home every night to their family. And that's what I actually went and set out to do, and was a core part of developing our remote operating control center strategy and digitizing our assets so that we could remotely control those environments from an on-the-shore space. And it was a fascinating time in my career, which I would say was something that, was really being able to leverage the skills that I had coming out of a very digital technology orientation to do something which I felt was good for people and improving our safety record at Shell. And so it was something I felt very proud of. And to be able to see that my skills were transferable and also something that was very purpose-led for me in my career. So it was a reflection I was going through and just enjoying those great memories that I had of a very learning time at Shell. And, it makes me abundantly proud also to now get to introduce you to our first speaker tonight, who is a past colleague of mine from Shell. Her name is Bettina Bachmann, and I will be introducing her now to all of you. And we will hand the stage to Bettina so she can share her story and experience with you of a woman who has had fantastic success in working in the heavy asset industry. So with that, what I'm going to do is, Bettina, I'm going to give the stage to you, and I invite you to share your story with all of us. Bettina, over to you. We cannot hear you at the moment, Bettina.
Is my slide coming through, or?
Not yet, but now I can hear you. So we'll give you a second to get your slides up.
Yeah, they should come up now. Okay.
Okay, I do see them, and we'll add those in now. There you go.
Okay, perfect. Thanks very much. And thanks for the introduction, Cara. And welcome to all of you on the call tonight or this afternoon, wherever you are. It's a great honor to be here, and I'm looking forward to speaking to all of you and hearing your questions later on. And a special thank you, of course, to Cara and to Elina for getting us together tonight. I know there is always quite a bit of organization and effort behind making all these calls and getting a panel together. So well done. It's a great honor indeed to be here. So my name is Bettina Bachmann. I'm from Switzerland originally, and a geophysicist by background from the ETH in Zurich, and joined the energy industry about 35 years ago. And I can honestly say that when we're talking about heavy assets, as you can see them with these semi-subs on the picture here, it's probably doesn't make a big difference whether we are men or women in sight, and in comparison to all these big heavy assets, we are all pretty small, and I never quite understood why they should be more suitable or more suited to working in such professions than we are. I think it's our talents, our intelligence, and the power of engineering that has allowed us to build these enormous facilities, and that's also how we master them and keep them and us safe. So it's an ongoing question why we are actually having this discussion about what role women can or should play, or whether they are actually suitable to work in these industries. So indeed, I have spent about 22 or 23 years of my career in operational roles in Africa, in the Middle East, and all around Europe. The last 12, I should say, more in senior leadership roles, where I was based in the Netherlands and indeed met Cara there, and was leading global teams. So I had people in about 20 plus countries all across the globe. So I will kick off this series of 4 by talking not about the technologies that we see here on the picture and on maybe on some of the future pictures. I will really focus on what has impacted me, what has influenced me, how have I experienced these 35 years, what did I find helpful and what didn't help quite so much. And maybe also just reminiscing a little bit about the fact that if you had asked me 35 years ago what I would think the future will look like for women, I mean, 35 years ago, I was well and truly alone in most of the jobs I was doing. But I had certainly, I would have pictured a slightly more rosy situation than what we find ourselves in now. And that's, of course, rather sad. So now I have to find out how I change this slide. Very well. Okay. So on the next slide, indeed, just focusing on what happened in sort of in a situation where we can argue equal opportunities has been a topic ever since, and I do think we have seen more of it. It was interesting to follow Elina's speech about what happened in Russia. I wasn't really observing that so much. I think from the sort of Western perspective, we were always admiring Russia and many of the countries in this area, because we felt that women were a lot more included in the work process, and it was generally much more accepted that indeed that they were good at math and physics and chemistry and all these sort of things. So here it was really quite rare. There was one other girl from my school that studied geophysics, that studied physics while I was doing geophysics, and it was seen as rare, and one didn't really know what are these girls going to do with these professions or with these studies. So overall, I think from a world where women in this sort of heavy industry and energy industry are facing and have been facing numerous challenges, I was always sort of in the end a bit obsessed with the fact that it's, for me personally, not in the first instance about fairness and all these sort of nice things. It was about the fact that these challenges have often inhibited performance and growth of very talented girls and women. They could have done so much better. They could have grown so much more quickly if they were in a world where indeed they felt more accepted, they felt comfortable, they felt supported, and were really truly able to contribute to the best of their talents. So my argument was always also to my supervisors and to my sort of HR managers: you are wasting talent. You are not allowing us to really flourish and to give our best. It's to your own really sort of fault, if you will. And in that sense, I've always focused on the fact that we want to support the women that we come across. So I also think we all have indeed a big duty, a big task in making sure that our sisters, if you will, are doing okay and are allowed to always occasionally talk about things that they don't feel comfortable to share in the general environment. So what, next slide, I don't think can I do it here? No. On the next slide, let me just talk a little bit about the fact that there is indeed still many big differences in the different industries, in the different professions. I wouldn't say that dental assistants don't have their own challenges, but those are not the ones we're talking about today. We're really talking about more those on the other half of this lady, the 11% of civil engineers or the likes of it that are indeed in a very, very clear minority. And they find themselves in environments where even sometimes their professional capabilities are questioned. But they certainly do find themselves in an environment where things are not geared up to support them, and they won't necessarily feel normal in these particular situations. After a while, I've come to the conclusion that you can sort of subdivide these challenges into practical, professional, and emotional challenges. And on the practical challenges side, certainly I have to say that I think the world has moved a long way in these past 35 years. In 35 years ago, there were a lot of the practical things that I still had to fight with because there were simply no toilets for me, or to just sort of walk to the other side of an airplane in the desert because there was nowhere to go. And it's all on this sort of front that I think that we certainly have moved a long way. The energy industry, the heavy assets industry, they all had to follow a lot of regulatory changes and government drives to make sure that women can work in these professions. And I think they have delivered a lot of good things. So for me, it's always been the statistics anyway don't tell, well, the statistics in itself, they tell a story of where the world is, but they are not necessarily meaningful for myself. I'm just there as a unique and person that has to deal with these challenges. I have to, my reference point is my own strength, my own confidence, my own courage in how I deal with these challenges. And it's not statistics that will ever stop me. And I think that's certainly an important thing to take away from it. But also, indeed, on the family responsibility side, many of us do have families, and there were practical challenges in those days that seemed to be unsurmountable at the beginning. And in the end, you could talk about it. So it somehow worked out for me, but there was certainly nothing in place. And that's why I say it's important not to accept statistic as a truth that you have to live by or to cope with, but take it into your own hands, basically. On the professional side, it's all about, especially at the beginning of a career, am I actually good enough? Can I do it? Because, yeah, indeed, if you're one of 11% or maybe the only one, the guys around you will probably do it a bit differently, and they will speak a different language. And not being one of them and not always being part of their crowd doesn't necessarily give you confidence. So how these professional sort of challenges are experienced often depends on the supervisors and their support. And that comes especially when indeed you have, like Cara described just now, when you have to go to rig sites, when you have to do field work as well, and not having the confidence then is a big thing. At a later stage, things change. And although I think the challenges, the leadership challenges, or the challenge of becoming a first-time leader and then later on more senior leader, they are exactly the same for men and for women. But my experience is that men somehow never question their ability to do that, while I was often sitting there thinking, well, who will follow me? Am I actually good enough? Am I credible? And it took quite a bit of learning and realizing that yes, a high pressure, high temperature strategy for the central North Sea is not different whether it's made by males or made by a female boss. And I had to explain that to my team at some stage as well. And it's all about how we face up to our own interpretation of these challenges, I would say. Then on the last group, the emotional challenges, that's probably the most striking group of challenges that I have not only experienced myself and often indeed attributed to the professional and practical situation, but having in these last few years dealt a lot with women in India as well, and realizing how strong our expectations as also on the role that we play as females in society, whether it's as mothers or as partners, as daughters, whatever, there are expectations in society, there are expectations that we have in ourselves that we want to fulfill. And we often put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And it's probably easier if you are indeed if you're a doctor or a nurse or something, a profession that is much more anchored in society as being suitable for a woman, to combine all these things together. They are not in contradiction. While indeed being a civil engineer or being out on a rig site or some indeed heavy industry tasks in mining, that is seen as quite contradictory and as black and white, and it leads to situations where we have to defend ourselves and often explain ourselves in moments when, again, the expectations that we have in having a family and being a good mother as well as a good leader of a geophysics team or whatever you are, it's often pretty heavy, and it can become quite stressful if you can't share it with anybody. So once again, here, not everybody is fortunate always to have the right partner or the right boss or the right network in the background. But it's the one thing that I can always strongly recommend is to make sure that you have a bit of a network of people who you can fall back on and who you can call up and share your grief when it comes to that. Because very often it's not good to speak to people who are too close or too involved or have a bias because they have a vested interest. It wasn't always the best thing to talk to my husband about things, although he was extremely supportive. It wasn't always the best thing to talk to a boss, however helpful the person was going to be. Sometimes you just had to get rid of your grief and your concerns, and once it was out of the system, it was indeed well and truly out of the system. So networks, sponsors, mentors, you name it, they all help. So let me come to my last slide here, and what you see here is a picture from Oman from 1984. Oman was my second posting after the first one in Tunisia, and then Oman. And both in Tunisia and Oman, the biggest challenge in my role was whether I could go on field trips with the people, with the men. Obviously, they were all male. And do field work where you sometimes didn't know where you ended up and where you would spend the night and how things would go. So this is still one of the pictures I could find and post on this slide. And the title of it is indeed What I Wish I Had Known When I Started. Because just knowing certain things sometimes makes life a hell of a lot easier. We cannot change the people around us, and we cannot often, just being alone, change the ways of working or the habits or the culture in a company. If it's not helpful, we somehow have to cope with it. But understanding where things come from and what is behind it is quite important if we then plan our actions. So what I experienced is in hindsight, I feel that the main concerns that many of the men that I was dealing with had about women in this industry were about the level of commitment. So I was already asked at my initial interviews how I would deal with a situation in as an exploration manager, because it was always understood that, okay, if you join this group, then you will end your career as an exploration manager. How would I do that if I, for example, were in an Arabic country and I was a female exploration manager and this, that, and the other? So they came with all sort of challenges of description of what I would encounter. So they couldn't imagine that I would bring the level of commitment for 20 years to the company to actually then fulfill this role at the end of it, because that was their end goal. They indeed, partly also because of that, they questioned my ambition to succeed and advance. They were okay that I could do the job probably, and they didn't mind having me around, but is she really gonna have the bite, as we say in Switzerland, to compete? And is she really interested to advance into a role where she has a lot of responsibilities, where she has to fire people because women don't like these things, etc., etc.? And then there is always the lingering concern of some of the men that women turn out to be high maintenance. Now, you all know what they mean when they say that. Don't have to explain that any further. But it is something to watch, because it is the type of feedback that none of us wants to get. It's probably some of the most damaging and most cruel feedback as well that I have seen given. I was luckily never in that position, but I have seen it. The one thing that, of course, for 20 years I was trying to prove to everybody that I was not only a good geophysicist, but also a good team leader and a good asset leader, and later a good VP, and that I understood my business and my job. I can tell you honestly, in 35 years, nobody has ever questioned my technical capabilities. I spent far too much time in trying to prove myself and trying to be always correct and always the person who fixed things and made sure everything was top standard and quality at the end of the day. And indeed worrying about the fact that they didn't think I could do it. Well, nobody ever asked me, nobody ever seriously questioned me. And I think that's something that I always also hand to mentees of mine when I see that there are concerns about this. I tell them, look, if you have the skills set and if you believe in yourself, go for it. There is nobody going to question it. In most cases, they have more than enough. I think the other big thing, which I wish I had known, is something, and Cara will probably remember that as well, is when I was in my still technical and then indeed more digitalization type role with subsurface software later on, we were sort of grouped into extended leadership teams, and I joined a leadership team that Cara was a member of as well. It was quite a large, indeed extended team. And I joined that team, and for the first time in my life, I was in a group of leaders where probably about 30% of them were females. And I never thought about it for the first 2 days. It was just fantastic. I loved the experience, but it was only after 2 days that I realized I finally feel just completely perfectly normal, because there are other women around and they behave like me and they ask the same type of questions and they laugh at the same time, and they just can't give a damn sometimes when all this sort of muscle flexing of our male colleagues is happening. So they're very small things, but being in a group where the 30% level is present or more means that we don't feel like a minority anymore. And I think it is just like as if a bit of a weight, a bit of pressure falls off you, even if you have never felt it was there for probably more than 20 years. I never felt it. But when it was off, just that experience helped me so much to understand how things come together for many of us at the end of the day, and how we feel about it determines how we react, how we perform, and how we can actually contribute with our talents. So I hope I haven't gone over time too much. Cara, back to you. Thank you for your time.
Bettina, thank you very much for your great dialogue. It's just fantastic to listen again to these moments in your career. And we have several questions that have come in already. What I'd like to do is just ask you one or two, and I think we can also address some of them during the panel session. So what I'll do is get you a little bit more on screen here and show you one of these first questions. So one of our LinkedIn users, Giselle, is asking, what is the biggest challenge that you faced independent of family commitments as a woman? I know you touched on a number of the challenges that you and even I have also experienced, but can you elaborate just a little bit more on some of those things independent of the family commitments that you had?
Yeah, I think there are probably two. One is a very sort of small one, and it still makes me smile, but I remember it just as if it was yesterday, was when I started to work in Oman. There is some echo. Do I need to do something different, or?
I can hear you okay, but I will mute myself while you're talking.
Or is it the stop sharing thing that I need to do? Is this better? Yeah, I think so. No, it's still there. So the first one is a very minor thing. Yeah, coming to a Middle Eastern country in those days, and especially Oman, was how do you dress? Yeah, it's a very simple question. And of course, I looked around. I'd asked before, but you couldn't buy anything there. You just brought whatever you had picked up in Europe, and you knew you had to live with that for 6 months. So I was trying to be sort of mindful of indeed covering up and a little bit, but still needing my normal European clothes. And so one day I was walking down a corridor and I was wearing a pair of trousers and sort of a tunic, a long blouse with a belt, which I thought was a good compromise to make. And but some of my indeed British colleagues were quite simply, they were not used to seeing women in business that didn't wear dresses or suits or whatever proper. And I still remember him coming along the corridor looking at me and up and down, and then, "Good morning, Bettina. Judo lessons today?" And I felt so awful. I felt absolutely awkward after that, and felt I had gotten it completely wrong. And it took me years to develop a certain confidence to, okay, I'm the only one. I mean, I'm sort of exotic anyway. What they think, what they say, as long as I don't hurt any sort of local feelings, I will do what works for me. But it took years for that to overcome it. The other challenge, I think, as a woman that we always have is that there are perceptions that we will not, especially if we are seen as one of those women who have sort of female traits. She will not fire people. She will not do the dirty work. She will not do the difficult jobs that you often have to do in a leadership role. And you can do them more nicely, or you can do them less nicely. I think they are equally difficult for males and for females. And I hated the fact that I always indeed almost had to justify that I was capable of doing it because I understood perfectly well what was the right thing for the company. And I'm sure you have experienced that yourself as well.
Yes, indeed. And Bettina, there are several questions here. So what I would love to do is to come back to some of those after the other speakers have a chance today. But you triggered just one quick thought as I just listening to some of those challenges, and recall all the trips that I made to the offshore and spending time, even days or a week at time in the offshore environment. And on one of the particular assets, they quadrant off an entire corridor for me because I was the only woman on an offshore asset with another 230 men offshore. And they were very intent on making sure that nothing would go wrong here, and that I was treated with respect. And at the same time, I didn't really enjoy per se the special treatment. I kind of went out there as one of the guys, and they sure didn't see me that way. And so it was definitely a feeling of segregation. And I was allowed to, dine with them. So we had breakfasts and dinners together and things like that. But, I never forget, those nights of walking down a very long, dark corridor all by myself to the last bedroom, and, in that, on that asset. And, that feeling of, I'm here among a group of 230 people, but I felt really alone. And we'll never really forget those feelings. Bettina, thank you very much for these fantastic reflections. As I say, lots of questions coming in. What we're going to do is switch over to our next speaker. And we're going to come back to you in the panel session after we've heard from each of those speakers. So would really like to thank you once again. And what I will do is introduce Elvira, who is our next speaker. And Bettina, I will put you in the backstage until we're ready for the panel discussion. So thank you once again.
Thank you.
And Elvira, welcome. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can, Cara.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I'm going to just hand the stage straight to you, Elvira, because I know you have an inspiring story to share with us. And if you would like to share some slides, we can post those for you as well. And I will stay with you to make sure everything goes smoothly. Over to you.
Thank you, Cara. And before we start with some slides, I'd like to take you on a virtual journey with me. And I'd like to take you on a day in my working life, so you can experience what it means to do my job. So picture a forest in Germany, picture some rather rural area. Imagine a plant. It's a classical family enterprise. It's a steel manufacturing enterprise. And what they've done there for generations is exactly that, bend steel. It's family owned. The owner is in his 90s and shows up at the plant every day. Now, such a family owned enterprise, you wish to pass on values. You wish to pass on to the next generation. So what did the enterprise decide? They said, well, we need to digitally transform ourselves. Now that's big words, tall words. What do they mean concretely? So what this company did and is still doing in the forests, in the rural area, imagine yellow vests, imagine a guard head, imagine steel toe shoes. imagine classical steel environment is they make industrial bulk containers. These are 500-liter containers or 1,000-liter containers, and they're filled with substances like fragrances, or it could be paste for jam. Some of it could be very perishable. But the point being, at the end, it is steel. And how do you make steel intelligent? What does that mean? So what the company set out and why they brought a software enterprise in is to say, our customers roughly have thousands of containers. They replace them only every few years, if not decades. We need to find a way to retrofit these assets, to put on lids that have sensors that measure the fill level of the asset, that measure the geolocation of the asset, and that provide to the customers the information about how full am I, when do I need to be replenished, where am I, how often have I been opened, and other useful business information. So when you do my job, you go out to customers like this steel manufacturer and help them find a way to transform their business, to bring intelligence in. In this case, intelligence meant lids with sensors that could measure the pressure, that could measure the temperature, that could measure the fill level, and help them use this kind of information to provide to customers information about when do I need to do my next replenishment? Where is the asset? Where has it been moved to? Has it been a yard at 35 degrees Celsius, although something perishable is inside? This is what it means to do my job. And now let me introduce myself. My name is Elvira Wallis, and I'm running Internet of Things at SAP. Cara, I would like to share some slides, and bear with me. And I hope you can see the slides now. And with that being...
We can see your slides, Elvira. You're all set to go.
Lovely. So let me walk you through, when you walk my shoes, when you work at a company like SAP, some general statistics on what that means. So SAP has roughly north of 100,000 employees. We're present in many countries and also in lots of industries. Heavy asset industries are among the core industries, discrete manufacturing, process manufacturing, and many others. So clearly a large company. If we're looking at some other statistics, SAP has more than 440,000 customers, and 82% of the world's medical devices are produced in one way or another touching SAP software. Now, mind you, the statistic that is not on this page, but I'm sure that really matters to many people, is about roughly the same percentage, north of 80% of the world's beer production happens with SAP being in the picture. So that's the clearly important statistic here. And if we're looking at women in management, SAP has a percentage of north of 26%, and the target, of course, is to increase that over time. Now, you might ask, what does that have to do with women in asset-heavy industries, and what are my experiences? My experience is clearly that you have to know your topic, you have to know your customers, and you have to know your audience to succeed. So going back to my story from earlier, understanding the mindset of that family-owned steel business and understanding what it means for them to embrace digital transformation. You need to understand that particular customer. You need to understand the subject matter and you need to understand your audience. And it is a very different set of parameters at other customers. So the versatility to adjust to a situation, adjust to that specific customer need and demand, to be customer centric and understand the subject matter, synthesize between different customer needs and also distinguish between them, and knowing your audience, whether you're in the boardroom or whether you're in the working environment, matters. And with that, I would like to talk about some of the customer stories that I have experienced, that we have experienced, and also at this topic of Industry 4.0, or also known as Industrial Internet of Things, and where the opportunities lie for women in heavy asset industries. So let's do another journey here. In this case, a journey into history about the industrial revolutions. So when we speak about the first industrial revolution, right, we've all learned that in history in school. We're talking about mechanical production facilities, the importance of steam, the importance of water and mechanization. After that, there was mass production and Taylorism. Everybody having finite pieces of work to be produced, and division of labor mattering greatly. Very little emphasis on teamwork. Then with the third digital revolution, we brought in electronics and IT systems to automate. Now, all devices are connected. Connectivity is paramount, although not ubiquitous. We do know of disconnected environments. And the information power flowing from these devices, from the machines, leads to masses of information that needs to be made sense of, that needs to be brought into a business context to really derive some outcome. Therein, as well in the different working paradigm, where now teamwork matters more, the customer centricity matters more, is also where chances lie for people that really know the subject, know the customer, and know the audience. And I believe that is a key to success. So if you are interested in cloud computing, if you are interested in Internet of Things, if you are interested in edge computing, if you are interested in industrial big data management, this field of Industry 4.0 holds promise. It's a growing field. And if you wish to become a subject matter expert, one of the key ingredients to success, this is a field with opportunity. And I believe that key to succeeding is clearly knowing, understanding the subject, having that subject matter expertise that the previous speaker talked about. It's non-negotiable. If we're looking at these technology enablers, we also need to understand how they play together, because the technology enablers lead really to a vertical integration of the real-time data that then horizontally can be applied across enterprises and businesses. And coming back to the topic of subject matter expertise, one of the recommendations I would make, one of my learnings is being an expert in one subject matter is wonderful. It is necessary, but it is not sufficient. If you understand your subject matter area, but you can also connect the dots, you can synthesize and have that T-bar knowledge where you understand the complexities and the intertwinings and inner workings between adjacent fields and your own subject matter area, that is something that will distinguish you from many other experts. Because experts sometimes happen to be expert in exactly one field. Knowing adjacencies, knowing different fields can be very, very relevant. And one of the things that highly benefited me in my career was switching between areas and time learning a new area. So in a way, I became a subject matter expert in a variety of areas, and afterwards, I could connect the dots between these areas and became somebody who had expert knowledge, but also was a generalist. A very, very marketable and very, very much needed skill. So know your topic, know the adjacent topics, make sure you're not focusing only up the one subject matter area and have blind spots that could prevent you from coming up with the more holistic solution. Now, let me talk about how intelligent technologies such as Internet of Things, machine learning, artificial intelligence can help propel enterprises forward, but also provide a huge opportunity for people to excel in this field. And people, right, that includes women. So obviously, with the topic of bringing time series data, real world data, together with business data and elevating that information to create that interlock between it, that allows to apply such information to asset heavy industries and to produce outcomes that weren't possible before. So I'm coming back to my earlier point. Know your subject matter field, but also know adjacencies. Because the key right now that I'm seeing in my field of work is this ability to connect the dots is something that can provide an opportunity to many of us. Now, assuming you know the subject matter at hand and the adjacencies, and you also know neighboring fields, my second comment was know your customer. So that's where it comes in. If you look at what I have to say about myself, it's about building things that matter to the customers. And for the teams I lead, create moments that matter. I'm a strong believer that a team culture that focuses on moments that matter for the customers, the partners, and the team, shared moments, are essential for the business success. They will motivate the team, they will motivate the customers. So in addition to knowing the subject, know your audience, and the audience is both the customers as well as the teams you need. Apply situational leadership. Treat others like they would like to be treated. And that means understanding what motivates them and what are the moments that matter for them. Pair that with compassion for the customer and their business needs. And I think that is really the triangle that we need. Subject matter expertise, knowing the customer, understanding the audience. Now let's look at the customer. I would like to look at some real life customer examples. And these examples I brought with me to share with you that yes, we can make a difference. And they're meant to inspire others. So let's look, for example, at a company in Italy. It's an energy utilities company, Ansaldo Energia. Why is this a great example of making a difference? Ansaldo Energia gathers equipment data. Why? To do predictive maintenance based on usage, based on understanding asset health. They collect data at edge locations, that means right there in the plant, on milling machines, such as the component rotation or the axis rotation. Then business logic is applied. What does this component rotation or this axis rotation mean in the business context? And only the measurements that are out of a predefined range are brought to the cloud. And then in the cloud, the data is stored, is normalized, and is validated to resolve challenges, like to understand be aware of the health, performance, and to plan when to use the field operating assets, when to plan the field service. And if you look at the savings that are expected over the next few years and the cost reduction in field services, it's a very convincing case of how, with technology and understanding the customer and understanding the subject matter, one can create a difference. So this is a case where understanding the customer led, paired with understanding the subject matter, to a difference. I'll share with you another example. Another classic traditional manufacturer, in this case Indexwerke. Here also information is collected at the edge, where there are sensors to monitor the condition of meters. By the way, these machines are located at the customers of the producer of the machines. And there, the context is brought in by linking the manufacturing data to enterprise resource planning data and analyzing the machine data. What did the customer do? They wanted to get independent of the classic machine production. They wanted to create adjacent services that they could sell over a commerce platform. This is a classic case where if you understand something about commerce and you understand something about assets, you can advise this customer, you can work with this customer, help them support in their transformation of the business model. It's a classic case how understanding adjacent fields, in addition to the classic fields of collecting manufacturing data, bringing it to the cloud, looking at it, is helped by looking at what can commercially be done about. And it is a testimony to my earlier argument of no adjacencies, because that will help you understanding the customer more holistically and advising the customer more holistically, rather than being just a subject matter expert in one field. And that brings me to my third and last story. This is about a metal producer, and it is the topic of improving the turnover rate of these bulk material industrial containers. Instead of having them circulate 6 to 8 times a year, what if the level of emptiness and the replenishment needs could be done just in time, and the logistics could be just in time, such that the turnover rate could go up to 8 to 10. And you basically have a reduction of the idle time where these steel barrels are sitting around. And basically, it's another story about understanding the customer need to transform such a steel metal producer for industrial containers required a different type of subject matter expertise than in my earlier example of Ansaldo. And again, the topic of adjacencies, adjacent fields came in. And with that, I would like to point out a couple of things that do truly matter. If you create moments that matter for employees, including moments that matter for female employees, you're many times as likely to perform high as an organization. You need to also know your customer, and you need to know the subject matter as well as adjacencies. By bringing these items together, knowing the customer, knowing the subject, knowing the audience and the employees, and knowing adjacencies, I believe these are keys to being successful and to succeeding as a woman in tech, in this case, as a supplier to heavy asset industries. And with that, if there are any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them.
Cara, sorry to interrupt, but I think you're muted.
Yes, I needed to unmute myself. Thank you. So Elvira, thank you very much for your great reflections. You covered a lot of grounds and a lot of different topics, and we have many questions that are coming in from the audience, and we have 2 more speakers. So what I wanted to do was just pose one of those questions to you for a short reflection now, and then we'll listen to the other 2 speakers and see what time we have afterwards in the panel to respond to some more of these questions. I think the one that I would just like to pull up at this time was because of some of the skills that you mentioned and the attributes of what it takes to be successful as a supplier in the heavy asset industry. One of the questions that had come in from Dara Patel was what advice you have for women that are stepping into the tech or the heavy asset industry. And I would like to just couple that with asking you to sort of respond to both, to say, is it different being a woman from your perspective and your experience, being a woman as being a man? And that was a question that Peggy was also asking. So how is that then different? So what is the advice being the woman coming into this industry? And is there a difference in your experience?
My advice would be to, as I said, really be proficient in the subject matter, right? You need to really understand your subject. I would also advise people to really be customer-centric, have empathy with the customer, and trying to understand their unique needs, because then you deliver value. About being different as a woman, I would go with Sheryl Sandberg's advice. More often than not, women forget to take a seat at the table. In other words, if you know your subject, and if you understand the customer, make yourself heard, be vocal, take a seat at the table, become part of the discussion, and dare to lead. Because if you know the customer, if you know the subject, and if you have that skill of really understanding what matters to the employees, to your team, you need to dare to lead. And I'm sometimes wondering, does everybody understand that leading means daring? And yes, it takes courage. So I would advise take that courage.
And thank you for that. I think without further ado, we're going to need to move to our next speaker to give them both also an opportunity. And what I'm going to do then is invite Elina to come in to introduce our next 2 speakers. So Elina, if I can add you, and I think Elvira and myself will step into the back room and wait for the panel session to come back in. Thank you. And thank you very much, Elvira.
Thank you very much for both of you. I'm really pleased to welcome our next speaker. And since we're running a little bit out of time, I will do it really quickly. Please welcome Liana Meliksetyan. She's a Chief Operating Officer at Zyfra. She has an incredible career, and she's both in fields and also in an executive office. So she will tell you more about herself and her topic. Please, the floor is yours.
Elina, thanks a lot for such a warm introduction. Thank you to Cara and Elina for having me in this call. I was impressed to hearing stories from Bettina and Elvira. Thanks a lot. So about myself in 2 words, I'm doing as a CEO for Zyfra. In my 20 years background experience so far, I had a marketing, sales, business strategy and operations, partner management, was doing as an entrepreneur as a co-founder for 2 companies, advertising agency and IT company. then software guy and Microsoft was doing in different roles. Now for Zyfra, a Finnish-Russian company headquartered in Helsinki and Moscow. I'm Armenian, was born in Georgia, now live in Russia, work for a Finnish-Russian company. So always inspired to work in multinational environments, in different cultures, feel inspired, energized, because it gives me a lot of energy, good people around, and it's about how I can learn from people around me, my peers, customers, partners on daily basis. I will start sharing my screen just to and please let me know if you can see my presentation. So Elina, if it's good, so you can see my screen, right? I can hear you.
Yes, you're good to go.
Yes,
We can see.
yes. Thank you. So we'll be trying to manage this. Yeah, I believe it's okay. So I want to start because I understand we are in different time zones to a bit add some curiosity, some irony. I would start with a quiz game asking, this is Marina, and please welcome. And the question is, Marina has a dream job. He wants to be a captain of a boat on the Volga River. So question is, why Marina can be a captain of a boat on the Volga River? We'll appreciate if you will be sharing your ideas, why is not, in the chat, and allow me to continue with some reflection which I wanted to share with you in order to give you perspective which opportunities we can have and how to convert from a current situation to opportunities, how to realize your potential, and how we can do differently. And Elina, please help me if you can see in chat some ideas if our audience and attendees are sharing while I will be speaking. So wanted to share some figures about Russian market. As I said, Zyfra is a company located in different countries, having presence in Latin America, India, Europe, Russia, Africa, and with R&D located in Russia. That's why we are hiring people and working with different roles in Russia. I wanted to share with you some figures in order to give you some perspective how our market looks like in terms of IT workforce. So the share of IT specialists in Russia is less than in our neighboring countries. It's 2.4% of economically active population. At the same time, in the context of active digitalization, the demand of these professionals is growing at a neck-breaking pace. This remains true even in this pandemic situation, where brought down the number of open jobs by 21% in June 2020 versus June 2019. Staff shortage in the industry already exceeds 200,000 and can reach 2 million by 2027, unless the situation changes. We need more universal backend and front-end programmers, as well as mathematically inclined data scientists. Besides, there is a shortage in near IT staff. First of all, it's about product managers with IT and specific industry background. Both startups and corporate giants as well struggle to find good specialists. The problem is not just quantitative. I mean, too little specialists graduate, but also qualitative, poor training due to insufficient practical orientation of academic programs. The issue with quantity is due to the fact that Russian educational system is not, I would say, such a flexible and can quickly adapt to the situation, I have to say. Once upon a time, the country had dear need in economists and lawyers. The system had been reoriented to produce with skills, which it keeps doing so far. However, there was no reform to increase the number of IT specialists. Another issue is that Russian education is predominantly fundamental and theoretical. It's really great and fundamental background. From my experience, as I mentioned, I'm engineer physicist. I know how this education helps me. And I understand that this approach and background, it can produce excellent mathematicians who enter IT industry to become successful specialists and economists, but does not generate enough practice-oriented specialists. It fails to do so because of excellent educational programs. Even students, we are talking a lot because, as I said, we are hiring, we have internship program themselves. Notice that in different surveys that I will bring some figures. 31% of respondents said it was necessary to update the curriculum. 29 said that the curriculum did not reflect the labor market requirements, and 30 mentioned the lack of practice, which is in IT, especially in industry IT, key factor or criteria for success. And due to the shortage of IT specialists, Russia falls behind its competitors in the international market, as many promising as pertinent projects remain in embryo only because there is nobody to bring them to implementation. And as usual, talent is key. In absence of human resources, new undertakings will never develop into serious business. Today's business must be flexible enough, I would say super flexible, to test as many hypotheses as possible per unit of time. This process can go into waves, intensive, involving highly expert staff, or extensive, making use of plenty of specialists with relevant skills. The latter is also, I would say, challenging and problematic. Besides, there are other challenges that are more difficult to address from my point of view. Not all students can handle IT programs. It's a quite complicated technical subject. Those who initially think it's all easy and entertaining give up halfway through the course. Plus, also in IT, there are approximately as many women as men, like 50-50. The common stereotype is still that technical professions are better suited for men. That's why positions of programmers, engineers, developers, etc. are usually given to men, whereas women are supposed to stay at the back office. Even parents would advise IT professions to their sons 3 times more often than to their daughters. with gender stereotypes also influence the number of skilled staff in IT. I see two solutions to current challenges, which I wanted to share with you, and will be happy to hear your opinions, your ideas. First one lies in women themselves. Be more mature. Believe in yourself. Invest your time, your energy into your education, in your network. Build your career. Look at opportunities which companies now are offering, like internship programs, training programs, talk to people, because as I said, so cross industry, industrial IT, artificial intelligence, machine learning, so requires a lot of skills and knowledge. And please do not give up. Everything is possible. Just you need to think about how to develop your career to have sustainable growth. And the second is digitalization of industry. And in my opinion, let me try to share next slide. Yes, great. And in my opinion, Industry 4.0 revolution will not make the same mistakes as previous ones. And I believe it will neither cause greater damage to the environment or nor increased so-called gender gap. High quality personnel has been and will be sought after at the mining enterprises and in the other industries as well, like oil and gas, discrete manufacturing, processing industries. Autonomous vehicles and dispatching systems implementations will create, I do believe, new comfortable professions, such as robots operators, for example, mine dispatchers. Staff structure in mining companies is changing also. Some of them have already formed female crews of high capacity vehicle drivers, which was previously an unthinkable idea, I would say. And I want to bring a great example, which I want to share with you. Presently, Zyfra is completing intelligent mine implementation in India in cooperation with Triveni Earth Movers, the largest mine operator in the country, in a historic initiative in women empowerment. 12 lady drivers from a tribal background, previously driving auto rickshaws in Ranchi, are now operating 100-ton dumper trucks at Parky Baravadiv coal mine. Over the few months, they went through a serious training and development, and you can see result. What I want to tell you in other words, if you have such a dream, if you are skilled, if you have enough experience at the moment, all these trends giving you absolutely new perspective and can dramatically change your life. And I'm sure that at next stage, after mine vehicles robotization, Wes and many other women will have amazing and comfortable job And Zyfra promotes this change. On the one hand, working at a mining enterprise becomes less painstaking, with further man hours required per unit of ore produced. But on the other hand, the required level of staff competence will certainly keep growing. And next example, which I want to show you, it's from Peru, Latin America. It's another project. Zyfra implementing together with Casapi Mineria and mine fleet management system. Mine fleet management system collects real-time information on mining vehicles. To that end, special sensors have been installed on all excavators, mining trucks, bulldozers, and other equipment. After each load and unload, drivers obtain the optimum route according to several criteria. The data is seen by the excavator operators and trucks drivers on the smart panel in their cabins. Woman Rosa Lagos has become the first coordinator of this important for customer project. You can see Rosa on this picture, and she started as a trainee. She did great job as a professional. You can understand it's about, as I mentioned before, engineering disciplines, IT, change management, process management. And this is another example of the motto which we started our call weekend. From my personal reflection and experience, I want to use the opportunity to say that everything is possible. If you want, build your career, be confident, and such a heavy asset industries like mining, oil and gas, processing industries, autonomous vehicles can give you absolutely new perspective, new dimension of your professional experience in life. Thank you so much for attention. Get back to Elina and want to understand if we have any ideas on my question, which I started to ask about Marina.
Yes, we do. We do have 3 suggestions. First one is no toilets for women on the Volga boat.
So I understand we are out of time. So thank you for such a creative answer. So
the next one, it's like Marina is being discouraged by not seeing another Marina in the same boat.
Great.
And
so
the last one is this.
Yeah, so likes a lot such irony and humor. So the right answer is, because Elina also mentioned that we have a list of prohibited professions. So with the system in place on the Volga, this occupation of captain requires Marina to have prior experience as a ship mechanic, and their job is one of the hundreds that are open just for men only in Russia at the moment. It just to show an example that we have to be quite brave to say about our dreams, to say it openly, to be vocal in order to have equal rights if we have such a dreams, to realize our potential and to be able to do what is suitable for our skills, for our energy, for our motivation. So thanks a lot. We'll be happy to continue our discussion on the panel discussion, I understand. Unless, Elina, maybe you have some questions to me, or we are out of time. I'm just looking at.
Yes, I think we can get back to the questions after Polina's speech. And thank you very much, Liana, for this inspiring and encouraging presentation. I will get you back to the green room. And then after that, after about 15 minutes, you'll be back to the audience.
Thank you so much.
So, and welcome our next speaker. She's Polina Vasilenko. She is going to talk to you about her way from oil and gas industry into green renewables energy. So please share your presentation. And if you're all set, I can step back.
So you can see my screen?
Yes, everything is good.
All right, great. Hello, everyone. My name is Vasilenko Polina, and today I'm going to talk about my green way from oil and gas to renewables. Let's get started. So I will split my story on 3 parts, oil and gas, how I studied abroad, and how I started my renewable energy company. And for every part of my life, I will share some tips which can be useful for our audience, and hopefully you can use it in your heavy tech life. So when I was a kid, actually, I was dreamed to be an ecologist and save the world and do something useful for the planet. But Russian reality put me into oil and gas industry, and I worked there more than 14 years. I was basically cementing engineer, so I pumped cement in the well and constructed oil and gas wells. So on the photo you can see this me on the tractor. I'm trying to get a phone call to my family, and on the second picture I'm counting cement bags, like it was around 1,000 bags. And on the last picture, you see I also have hard cap, like Cara showed in the beginning. So I'm in the mask. It was not because of coronavirus, because I worked with cement. So basically, cement was everywhere. It was nice time. I learned a lot during my oil and gas life. You see, this is a beautiful heart from the pipe because people burn gas, which they don't need. But anyway, and I would like to share some tips from this part of my life. So first one is, do not afraid make mistakes. I saw many cases when best engineers, they do millions mistakes which cost millions dollars. So it's okay to make mistakes. Second, I would like to say that you always can be useful in your team. So yes, I was weaker as a woman when I worked on the rig. Yes, I cannot hold a big pipe, but I could go and agree about lunch. I could bring electricity to cementing unit and other activities. So you always can be useful in the team, and it doesn't matter if you're man or woman. And the last tip is to be realistic about yourself. You don't need to be perfect. And if you see that you're good enough for this job, if you know your subject, be strong and prove it, and it always will work with other people around. So let's move to another part of my life. So in 2016, I decided to change my life path from oil and gas to renewable energy. And I went to Germany to study renewable energy. It was extremely hard because it was 15 years between my first master, I'm chemist, and the second master, master of renewable energy, specialization ocean energy. So it was extremely hard, but I did it because I think my genes started to move, and I remembered when I was a kid, I wanted to save the world. So, and I decided to study new profession because oil and gas is not sustainable industry, and I wanted to be part greener future. So I went to study. It was very, very nice. It was really hard, but it was really nice. And few tips. So from my experience, so when you change your life, you feel young again. It was a student party, went to library, do different things. And at that time I was 32, but actually I felt that I'm 18. So change life, feel young again. Second tip, the best investment is your education. So you can buy a car or you can buy a house, but in my experience, education gave me more than another things, because you grow inside, you have more opportunities in the life. And the third tip is when you meet new people, new places, you see the world wider. So, and it helps in your professional life, it helps in your with relatives, your friends. So meet new people, new places, and see world brighter, wider, etc. So after that, when I studied renewable energy, I worked a little bit in Finland, and at some time I decided to run my own renewable energy startup, HelioRec. So we are building a cost-effective floating system for solar power plant. So I got idea to build floaters for photovoltaic panels, and also implemented circular economy approach to our system. And I'm solo founder, I'm female founder, I'm making hardware. So it's not an IT startup, so it's a hardware startup. So usually investors don't like this type of industries. But I could get investment, I could get some grants, and after around like 1 year after I opened a company, we could build the first pilot project in Russia. So it is the first in the world hybrid system for lake cleaning. So we combined floating photovoltaic and aeration system. And we try with this system to clean lake, to bring more oxygen in the water. So now it is in operating mode, and we are doing our development further. We have 2 companies, one registered in France, another in Moscow. So it is multinational team. I try to manage everything everywhere. It's very challenging, very interesting. So, and my few tips is do what you like to do. So I always wanted to do my own things. I wanted to do something useful, and I'm doing it. It's extremely hard, but I'm enjoying what I'm doing. Second tip is no one can break you until you will agree that you were broken. So it's always will be someone who will tell you it's not gonna work, no one will give you money, no one will believe in your idea. But once you agreed about this, you will lose. So don't trust people, trust yourself. And the third tip is there will be always supportive people who will believe in you, and surround yourself with these people, because they will give you more energy to move on. So listen them, don't listen other people, because there always will be people who don't want you to succeed. And I'm sure once you believe in yourself, you can do it. So this is basically a story of my life, and I will be happy to answer your questions. And if you want me to help you somehow with mentoring or something, find me on LinkedIn, and I will be happy to give more tips, because it's like a huge, interesting journey. So please do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Polina. We do have one question from the audience. Did you have any conflicts when you initially weren't? Like, there's an echo. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first question is, what tips would you give for a mature student to make the best from returning back to education?
So in my case, when I found internship in Finland, so they paid me salary and I returned all my money which I paid for education. So in Europe, it's quite easy to find paid internship.
Okay. And the second one, did you have any conflicts when you initially weren't doing what you thought you would do? For example, wanting to have a sustainable role, but working in the cement industry?
Have any conflicts with whom?
With myself? With yourself, yeah.
No, no, because it was great time, you know, like you have cement everywhere. Sometimes you don't have a shower to wash yourself after like 3 nights when you don't sleep, because you're doing cementing operations from one rig to another rig. So you're so dirty, like you're so tired. And now when I remember that time, now I think I can survive everything after this amazing oil and gas journey. So it was not conflict. I really appreciate this time because now I can survive everything.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Polina, for your story. And I think we can get back with all the speakers, so we can, all of us, have a panel. And I think we still have time for a couple of questions. Cara, would you like to start?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And first of all, thank you to all the speakers for these extremely inspirational stories. I've really enjoyed listening and learning from each of you. And, you know, I think many of us were talking about sort of how we got started. And I shared at the opening introduction a little bit about what led me to joining Shell and really following my purpose and knowing that I could make a difference because of the skills that I brought to help to transform and even save lives in the industry. And so, Bettina, I wanted to ask you the first question, if I may. And if others also would like to share their story, please do jump in and let's see what we can inspire here. But basically, Bettina, so what was the deciding factor for you? Was it a person or an event back when you got started? What was it that got you going in your career in the heavy acid industry? You're muted, Bettina. We can't hear you.
What?
There we are. You know.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Because I didn't press anything, so I hope it's okay now.
You're okay. You're with us, yeah.
So when I think back, it had more to do with the choice of education, yeah, the choice of picking geophysics or sciences. Clearly a topic where I wouldn't sort of end up in a traditional profession for women. And once this decision was made and I sort of got on that track, a lot of things were more serendipity, which company I joined or whatever. But so this decision to actually go for geophysics was one that in the end, it was my dad's approval that I needed, not because I couldn't have done anything else. He would have let me do more or less anything, but he wanted to have a conversation with me about my choice. And I do remember this conversation on the terrace where we were sitting and sort of having a drink, and he said, "So, what makes you choose this?" And sort of I explained what my sort of thinking was, and it had to do a lot with the fact that I said I want to do something with energy. It was the times where we had sort of oil crisis, and we were all believing we would run out of oil in 20 years' time. And we were looking at nuclear energy, and I was very keen on sort of the whole geothermal side of it, which was actually what I specialized in the end. But the key thing was that I said, I want to do something with energy, so I have to go to the ETH and I have to study there. And then he sort of brought up the other topic that was close to his heart, knowing me. He said, well, but one day you might be wanting to have a family and a career in this industry, in this sort of environment. It will be extremely hard. And because he had friends who were doing that, so he knew what he was talking about. And I said, yeah, okay, there is a point. And of course, he knew me. He knew that I wasn't necessarily going to choose between two things, but that I would always probably want both. And so the second answer I gave him was, I'm too young to compromise. I can always do that later. And I've often thought back of this, and I think I'm still too young to compromise, but it's worth it. So I can only echo what all my fellow panelists here said before. The investment in education and sticking with it and believing in yourself is that's really what we all needed.
Perhaps, Bettina, I can follow that on with a question also from the audience, and then we'll move to one of the other panelists. And this was a little bit about mentors. And there have been a few questions that have come up throughout the conversations today regarding mentors. So to take this one, to summarize all the questions coming in on mentors. So what is your recommendation about the mentors maybe that you have had in your career, or finding others that have given you some guidance? What is your advice to the audience today in terms of finding mentors to guide you?
I think I look at it for more also from the position of the mentor. It's quite crucial to be clear about what you expect. Mentoring for me is more situational than sort of a steady sort of structure or arrangement with somebody. I've always felt I could add most to a mentee when they came to me with a clear question and the problem and said, look, you have been recommended, or such and such said, why don't you talk to Bettina about it? And then we had a clear task together. I always felt it was very stale when one had sort of a long-term relationship with a mentor. When we started mentoring, at least at Shell, then you were sort of expected to have a mentor and see that mentor. It was a bit like having a shrink, I believe, in America, where you sort of went through your problems with. And that, I think, is not ideal. So my recommendation is pick a time when you would need a promotion, or you have had a bad rating, or really something that you need advice, something tangible, something concrete. And then use it. It will give you energy and will let you run further, because the running you have to do yourself. The mentor won't do it.
Okay, Bettina, thanks so much. Let me turn to Elvira. And Elvira, from your really dynamic and incredible experiences you've shared with us. So if we talk about those that we get to mentor, if we think also about empowerment, if I could ask the question to you about what you do to empower other women, and also what are your thoughts about how we can close this gender gap to get to 50% equality in this heavy asset industry?
Excellent questions, Cara. I believe that we need to provide the appropriate work environment. Now, what is appropriate, right? And I would agree with what Bettina earlier on said. It's situational. I don't believe a regimen of mentoring does work, because there needs to be mutual chemistry, and also you need to be able to pass on something to that person. Now, creating an environment that inspires other women, that inspires other early talents to join the field, an environment that is conducive to great experiences that propels them forward. And frankly, that also includes some fun, right? People want to choose a job that really engages them, that is meaningful to them. And therefore, I wanted to share also these customer stories today, because I believe it can be very inspiring to make a difference. And I believe the jobs we're all in, the jobs you heard about today, what I think you heard from all of the panelists is this leaning in, this engaging in something that makes a difference. And also everybody, without using the word, in a way said that they get great reward from the job they have. And that is some fun. So if you ask me about the environment, we need to create an environment where these people can make experiences, where women can be successful by situational mentorship, by the way, which very often should be by males, I strongly believe in, and allow them to grow and feel the reward that this wonderful field brings with it.
Yeah. Thank you, Elvira. And perhaps also for you, I'd like to just pull one question out of the audience. And after this, then, Elina, I will turn to you to guide Polina and Liana through some questions as well. So, Elvira, a question spontaneously to bring to you from the audience is, so what about the pivot? So we've been talking a lot about, this purposeful, intentful choice that we make to enter into the career, and Bettina's great story and yours. What about those that are interested to pivot from one industry to another and gain those new experiences and perhaps taking their skill sets with them? How do you do that? So what would you recommend to women who may want to make a pivot? What is it you take with you in your career to other industries?
So I strongly believe to succeed in other industries, you need some transferable knowledge. And knowledge can be either formal education that you can transfer. It can also be experience. In other words, step with one leg into something new, but use your other leg to build on the experiences that you've made so far. And I do strongly believe that switching between industries is something that one can dare to do. I've seen it time and time in my field that people have done it. You just need to ask yourself, how much newness can I absorb, and what that I have learned so far can I build on? And then, as some of the fellow panelists said, build a network on which you can draw, either for advice or for, frankly, enhancing the knowledge you still have not gained, or also to have a sparring partner to understand really the customer situations and the situations in a negotiation that is going on. Because sometimes you need to be able to read the room. And if you enter a new industry, you might not be able to get all the cues because you're missing the experience, you're missing the knowledge. So allow yourself to draw on others. At the same time, as Polina said, do not stick with asking one person. Get a range of perspectives.
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic advice. And, it resonates so much with me too, Elvira. If I look at what we often refer to as the golden thread. So what is your golden thread that you've taken with you, throughout your career? And I've talked a little bit at the beginning about my digital experiences and, taking that from FMCG to high tech to oil and gas, and to retail industries. And so there are those commonalities you can bring with you. Not to forget also, of course, your own personality and your characteristics that are with you at all times. Thank you for that. That really resonates strongly with me as well, Elvira. Elina, may I hand it over to you also to see if we can get some questions on to Polina and Liana?
Yes, sure. Thank you, ladies. I would like to address the first question to Liana. And since we're talking today about the industries where women are underrepresented, can you describe a time when you felt the impact of gender bias during your career? And if yes, how did you handle it?
Thank you, Elvira. Elina, great question. Where were such cases? Fortunately to me, I never met any negative or some aggressive situation. it was always on the level of some feeling, like indirect impact on decision at time when people were making some thinking decision on big projects, like big deals, in some cases at hiring time. And I want to share how I was doing in such a situations, because I understand that everyone can meet such a conditions and circumstances, and will bring some like personal reflection. Normally, I'm wearing dresses and heels. It's my business style. And I see and feel on faces and in the eyes, you can feel, right? Because you're looking at emotions. People are trying to compare what they can see from your CV. CV says she's a nuclear physicist. She had an experience like great companies, proven experience, and trying to compare the visuals like dresses and heels and experience and to make decision. What I'm trying to do, and here is my tips. It's not like receipt or such advice. From my personal experience, first of all, I understand such a situation, and I'm trying to help people to make their reasonable decisions. So no pressure, no trying to demonstrate any defensive behavior. I'm trying with open mindset, be very positive, to create some warmth around me and share about my professional experience, because I want to show that, first of all, I'm professional. I have some competencies and I want people to rely on me as a professional. That's why smoothly, positively, I'm sharing my learnings. Any learnings, positive, maybe negative, doesn't matter. I'm trying to share what I can do as a people manager, because I do remember what Bettina said. People are trying to assess if she is enough strong, if she is ready to do some difficult job, if she is ready to be people manager. For example, in my experience, I'm working quite long time in international environment in different countries, and I have to be too sensitive, very careful to people's emotions, languages, cultures, time differences, everything. And my tips is be open, be authentic. What I'm doing, I'm not playing the role of a person who I'm not. I'm trying to be like I'm doing normally. And to me, if you ask me what makes me, I believe, successful, is the fact that I'm always doing as a professional, first of all. I'm showing that I'm a reliable person for company, for my employees. Also, I'm doing as a mentor. That's why what we are discussing today makes me super happy and impressed. I'm doing as a mentor, I'm doing as a body. I also have my mentors, and I agree that it's not like a job for someone. I'm doing when I have need to talk to my mentor. I'm just proactively showing that I need help, like mental advice on my career. So I believe, Elina, I answered your question.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Liana. And the next question is to Polina. So, have you ever managed your position? How you have managed your position as presence in the environment that is dominated by men? And what tips do you have for women who are listening us today?
When I worked in oil and gas, it was mainly I'm only one woman in the room. It is different from different clients. So if you're working in Russia with Russian clients, it's one situation. When you work with Shell, It's another situation where people more open to listen everyone. So, but let's assume that it is like a Russian harsh environment. How I put myself in the not to be scared of this men around, like very tough people. So I know that everyone is scared. Even this man who shows that he's like strong guy, he is also scared of his boss, of his clients, of his wife. So everyone is scared in this room. They just show that they're not. And I did the same. So, okay, I know that I'm scared. I know that everyone is scared. So it gives me more power to show my voice and talk with these people normally. And about tips, so I think it's most important is to be confident. So if you start to be shy, they feel it. They're like dogs, you know, like if they feel that you're scared, they will bite you. So don't show that you're scared and be confident. And the second one is to be well prepared. So if it is a technical meeting, to understand all details, go there prepared, and this homework will give you power for confident. So you will be the confident. So this is what I did in this harsh environment.
Okay, thank you. And we do have one question from the audience. Are there any advantages to being a woman if you want to start a startup?
So I guess it's my question.
Yes, I think it's for you.
Advantage. I think it's in general, when you run your startup, you're doing everything by yourself, and it's advantage for any person to get knowledge and skills which you never can get when you work in big corporate in general. To be a woman, any advantage, I think it is myth that now it's many investors try to invest money if you're a female founder. It's only 2%. It's very bad statistics. So all venture money, only 2% goes to female founders. So I don't know who help female founders. If you know, just give me this VC's found name. So advantage only for your personal growth. This is what I feel.
Elina, if I may, because what Polina said fully resonates to me also, because Zyfra is quite young company. We are 3 years old. And to compare with my experience in corporations, now I can feel and can understand, you know, two realities. What makes me proud, energized is about day-to-day discussed a lot. It's about diversity of opinions. Having different people with different backgrounds from gender perspective also. What is important to me personally, it's about having diversity of opinions, and it can make real help on such a time when you are doing something from baseline, because you can use strengths, in some cases weaknesses. Nobody is perfect, but diversity in opinions, to me, it's exactly what can make a big difference in your professional life and development, because people are making you stronger and better for sure, especially in such a time when you are just starting to do something. It gives you a lot of energy, and you can see how things you are doing growing up. That's why it's quite interesting for people who are making decision to start such a, or to make such a career step.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for adding this to Polina's reply. And so we are about to end our today's conversation. And I would like to ask all of you, 4 of you, if you would like to make any comments and maybe final tips and advice to the audience which is listening to us today. So please, Bettina, if you would like to go first, we can start with you.
Yeah, I think I would just repeat that it's most important to trust in yourself, to trust your instincts, and feedback is maybe another big topic that we haven't touched upon very much today. My experience is feedback is extremely helpful, but I've also been in situations where I consciously discarded certain feedback and decided, okay, it's good for me to know that that's what you think, but that's not what I think, and I'm not gonna let things be spoiled for myself because of the feedback I have just been given. It's also, again, it's often a female trait that we are trying to satisfy everybody and everything, and that's not helpful, I find. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your final comments and also for your speech and your presentation. And Elvira, would you like to go next?
Thank you. Yes, I'll round it up with the 3 points I made earlier. Know your subject, know your customer, know your topic, and lean in with those 3, and you will see rewards. You will have some fun.
Yes, just it takes sometimes, but you will get there. Thank you very much, Elvira, for this final course and also for your speech and for your reflections on the day of at the beginning of this speech. It was really interesting. Thank you. And Liana, would you like to continue?
I would add, believe in your personal purpose. To me, it's important what we discussed today, what I heard from us today. It's about belief, it's about relevancy, it's about authenticity. So it's what I want to add. And thanks a lot I'm really impressed and really happy to have such a today's evening. So we'll be happy, and I see we can make a difference. And what I can see, I will be recommending to have active role in women in tech organization. So impressed by such a warm atmosphere and friendly discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you to you, Liana. Thank you for joining us today and for contributing to empowering women all around the world. And Polina, would you like to say a couple of words?
Yeah, sure. So I would like to say that be realistic about our society. So it's a long way for closing a gender gap, but if you will not do anything, nothing will be changed. So women like we, strong women, which can change something, we can show up, we should do something. It's little steps, but without these steps, nothing will change. If you think that gender diversity inclusion is important, so support this type of organization, be a mentor, do some meetups, anything what you can be useful for this type of activities, this type of movement. So be part of it, and I believe only together we can make this world a better place.
Thank you. I agree with you. And I think all of us here supporting this mission, and that's why that mission brought us together tonight. And I see, based on the comments that we get, that people think all of you are amazing speakers for the encouragement and for inspiration. And I personally was amazed with your stories. And Cara, would you like to wrap up our today's conversation?
Well, yeah, I'm feeling also very inspired. So really want to thank each of the speakers, and Elina, to you for your collaboration and partnership together to bring this together tonight. I think as I was listening to all of the final pieces of advice, the only last thing I could say is I agree with all of that, and I would just add, believe in yourself, and I think that will also get you quite far. Elina, I think it's been a fantastic conversation tonight. I learned a lot, and I hope also that our audience has taken a lot away. So with that, I think we can just say thank you to the whole audience and to our speakers in particular for sharing your time and your experiences with us. We've all learned a lot from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening. Bye.